Reed, and I moved to Desert Hot Springs the end of May 1978, just in time for the warm or even hot weather. Moved into a brand new house on Santa Rosa and still live in that same house. I'm really pleased with it. We added on to it, and we're very successful with permits and so forth with the city. And we were careful to do everything right. At that time, there were about 6,000 people in Desert Hot Springs. And the main reason that I moved here is that I lived in Phoenix for a while, and it's a desert area, and I loved it there. But then my company transferred me to North Hollywood. What a change. But my husband had an uncle and aunt that lived here in Desert Hot Springs, and we visited them twice. And he said, you know, when we retire, we should move to Desert Hot Springs. And I said, well, we don't have to retire to move to Desert Hot Springs. So I went back and called a realtor and put our house up for sale. And in 3 weeks it sold, and we had to move. He was here with me until 1986 when he passed away. He had cancer, and that's one of the reasons I'm involved with Relay for Life. All of that time, and most all of my life, I've just fallen into things. I never intended to work for Weight Watchers, which I did for 30 years because I volunteered one day and they wouldn't let me go. I had that happen in several jobs. My boss would get fired and they'd say, it's yours. One evening I went to dinner with a gentleman, and he said, on Tuesday you're going to be nominated for the city council to fill Gary Bosworth's spot. It ruined my dinner. I couldn't eat. I've seen so many things happen. Of course, by the time that happened, I was more involved with the city. Up until then, I was working for Weight Watchers, and I've sewn. I've finished needlepoint for years. I've been active with Embroiderers Guild. We used to have a chapter here, and I'm a past president of that. And I'm a past president of American Needlepoint Guild in San Bernardino, which I visited last evening. And Seroptimist. That has been a big area of my life. I joined Seroptimist in 1980 on my 50th birthday, August the 26th. Immediately got on the board as Ways and Means, worked on many projects with them, served as president several times. And during that time, Seroptimist partnered with 9 other Seroptimist clubs to start Seroptimist House of Hope, which is a separate corporation and a very successful recovery home for chemically dependent women. During the years of Seroptimist, I met a lot of people. I learned a lot about the city, and while Matt Wyuker was mayor, I got interested in attending city council meetings. And since that time, I haven't missed very many, because I find them interesting. It's different than watching it on TV. You get to see other people's expressions, not just the person that the camera's on. And that can be very fascinating. What else have I done? I've been on a commission for the city, Community and Cultural Affairs Commission. I was one of the people who spearheaded Veterans Park at the old People's Park that was at Cactus and Palm Drive. Worked through that. The 2 people that were on the committee with me both moved away. That's how I get so much credit. People just disappear out of my life and it lands in my lap. And it has happened so many times. It happened at Weight Watchers. I didn't want to be a leader. I resisted being a leader. And one night at 9 o'clock, I got a phone call that said, you have to do the meeting tomorrow. Okay. I did, and the next week I was a full-time leader. So that's just been the story of my life. I don't know whether it's being called being in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the right time, or whatever. But it has happened to me quite a few times in my life. And most of the time for the good. One of my daughters moved here with me. At that time she was 16. And went to Palm Springs High School because we did not have a high school at that time. We had one elementary school at that time in 1978, and that was Wensloff, which at that time was called Desert Hot Springs Elementary School. And sometime during that time, Ed Wensloff was the principal there. Just a wonderful, wonderful principal. And that's why after he passed away, they named it Edward Wensloff Elementary School. During, let's see, in about 1990, Seroptimist started honoring the Teacher of the Year. By 1990, we had two schools. We had Wensloff and we had Corsini. And Margaret House was instrumental in doing that project, and I was president of Seroptimist that year. So we honored the Teachers of the Year and did an essay contest along with it for the students. And every year up until 2007, Seroptimist honored the Teachers of the Year. By that time then we had 4 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school. So look at what has happened in those years. And I like living in a small town because you really get to see growth, see what's happening, see the people who are in office, see the people who are department heads for the city, the Chamber of Commerce, and you know them. They're not just a picture in the newspaper. They're not just people that you hear about, you know them. And everybody can do that. They can be involved. I spent some time volunteering at Cabot's, and I enjoyed that, but some other things got in the way, and I kind of sometimes spread myself a little too thin. But all in all, I love Desert Hot Springs. I don't intend to ever move away. My kids are going to have to deal with the house. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to enjoy. And on the 26th of this month, I'm going to be 80 years old. I'm pretty proud of that because as a child, I was told I might not live to be grown. And so every birthday is a celebration. And I've outlived, well, I outlived the people that told me that, definitely, but I've outlived a lot of them as far as how long I lived. But one grandmother and 2 grandfathers lived to be over 90, and both very active. So I figure I can keep on going for quite a while.
How about some people in town, like the Betty Hudspeth was the postmaster, and back in those early days, downtown and so on. Can you think of some names of people that stick in your mind?
I really have to see some things, like when we looked at pictures, we looked at that one picture, okay, then I remembered that Chamber of Commerce installation, and Paula Harris was in it. Buzz Gamble was a really good friend of mine and yours too. He was special. Dr. Ross's picture's in there. I remember him from almost the beginning. Who else?
John Furby.
Oh yeah, John Furby. Dennis Baldwin, who had the drugstore after John Furby. Dennis and his wife bought it from John Furby. And then they were in that building that's no longer there. And they built the building where the gym is now, where World Gym is. That was the pharmacy. Bill Minnie, I don't know if that name rings a bell, but He was a contractor here. He was also a council member. His wife, Pat, was a friend of mine and Seroptimist. He built that building. And let's see, who else? Well, of course, the Jacobsons, Ed Jacobson, I remember him working at the nursery. Virginia and Ed were in business there before I moved here, and we bought quite a few things from them. Some of the other people that were...
Santucci's?
Santucci's, yes. I've known them for a long time. Also, Julius Corsini. He was a mayor here. Gosh, I can't remember exactly when. He had a stationery store in that little strip behind Glossy. Where Glossy is now was a variety store run by Faye Corsini, his wife. And next door to it was a home decor store run by Emily Novak. She has since moved to Florida. Let's see, some of the other people that were, Elaine Harvey was a Seroptimist friend, and they had a restaurant out on Dillon Road at Corkhill. There's still a restaurant and a service station there. And Dorothy Smith was our Seroptimist charter president. She had a spa, and I think now it's called Emerald something up on Hacienda.
Mm-hmm.
Her son, Bud Jasper, was an attorney.
Dr. Lonergan?
Pardon?
Dr. Lonergan?
I really didn't know him. I just knew of him. I didn't really know him. Seroptimist did a play at the old building at Wardman Park. Now, probably neither one of you know about that building, but it was a Quonset hut. And it was just a wonderful building. It was pretty old, but it had a kitchen. It had lockers in there so that Seroptimist and Women's Club and Rotary and anybody could keep all their dishes and things there when they had an event. We used to have an event called Cinco de Mayo and had a big party there, big dinner, cooked all the food and served it and had a dance and so forth. That building was great, but it got to be beyond repair. And unfortunately, it was not replaced. And because then there was someplace to do an event, to have a fundraiser. But when we get our new community center, we'll have it again.
That's right. Do you want to wrap that up? Do you want to wrap?
Okay, that was October 2006
That you were?
that I was appointed. Anne Marie Gallant was the city manager. Alex Bias, the mayor. Mary Stevens, Yvonne, and Hank Hohenstein were on the council. I'll never understand why they picked me. Other than one thing they said, that they felt that I would be like a peacemaker and a tiebreaker. Because one or two council meetings prior to that, it was tied 2 and 2 for people being appointed to something. And they just were not going to go along with that any longer. So there was quite a stir, and Alex Bias voted against me, simply because it wasn't his idea. He was always very nice to me. I had no problem with it, and I understood why he voted against me. I didn't take it personally. I took it as that was his statement, that it wasn't his idea and he wasn't going to go along with it. But he had to, and there I was. It was kind of interesting when I was sworn in. Rossi was city clerk, of course a very dear friend of mine. And being the kind of person I am, and sometimes taking charge when I shouldn't, yes, I'm standing up there and raising my right hand and holding the sheet of paper, and she started off, and I read the whole thing. I didn't give her a chance. I didn't give her a chance to say each little phrase, and I repeated. I did the whole thing. I never heard the end of that. But, you know, she hadn't clued me in on that. She was so helpful for me to go through. I mean, I had no idea what their agenda packet looked like. I didn't know that it was that thick. And all of the supporting papers and all of that. So she would help me with that and keep me up to date on it. And in closed session, I learned some things I would just rather have not learned, and I've since pretty well forgotten them, and certainly never did repeat them. That was a hectic time. That was during Palmwood time, when there were special meetings because of trying to get Palmwood going, and you know, I was not as well up on things as I would have been if that had been a goal of mine, to be there and to do those things. But I did the best I could. And then in March, March, when there was an election, Scott Mattis then took that seat, and I was released, and it was good. So it was a good time, but I truly cannot imagine people going out and raising money to run for an office and listen to the kind of phone calls that you have to. I mean, there was one person especially who called me several times. Why did you guys do that? Why didn't you vote this way? Or ahead of time, you know, wanting support for something. And to put yourself in that position, that's not for me. So that was one of the things that I said right off the bat. I would never run for council. I like my commission. I had to give it up for that time. I had to step down from that. So anyway, that was my 5 months on the city council.
How well did you know Gary Bosworth?
How long? Gary passed away in July of that year, very suddenly. Were you here, Dan? Yeah. And it was kind of interesting. There were several people that wanted that seat. I was not one of them. But I was driving to Weight Watchers one day, and I was on Interstate 10. You know how there's things that you can remember everything that happened at that moment? Phone rang, and it was Teresa Thompson at City Hall. And she said, Dot, we want you to fill out a form, an application for that council seat. And I said, don't be silly. I'm not qualified. I don't want it. Well, we just want to swell the pool. Okay? Because at that time there were only a couple of people. And she said, and besides that, the talk is that they're not going to appoint anybody. They just want to have accepted applications and then made that decision. So I said, okay. So I went into City Hall, and I got the application and filled it out, turned it in on the deadline day. And the next council meeting, they announced that they were not going to appoint anybody. And so, phew, that was fine. And that was probably in September. And then October the 16th, I'll remember it very well, was when I had a phone call that afternoon, and this man said, I'd like to take you to dinner. I need to talk to you. No, first he said, I just need to talk to you. And I said, okay, I'll be back in Desert Hot Springs by 5 o'clock, and I'll talk to you then. He said, no, I'll come to Palm Springs and I'll take you to dinner. So he did, and that's when he popped that on me. We were just enjoying our dinner, and he said, and by the way, on Tuesday at the council meeting, you will be nominated for the vacant seat. I said, no. 5 times. And finally I said, okay. So as we're coming out of there, he's on his cell phone calling someone saying, "We got her." So that was how I landed there. Another
All right.
another place that I didn't intend to be, and there I was. There I
There's a
was.
theme here.
So when you were with Weight Watchers, did you ever have a chapter here in Desert Hot Springs?
Yes. I had a meeting right here in this room. Probably for the last 2 years that I worked for them. I retired in November of '08 after I'd had some health problems. I was the one that started this meeting. I started the meetings in Palm Desert at Palm Desert Country Club Association. I started a lot of their meetings, and probably in season, in the winter, I would have over 600 members in 8 different meetings. I started the Yucca Valley meeting. I started it in Joshua Tree, and drove to Joshua Tree every week for the meeting, and then we moved it to Yucca Valley. I did that for many years. It was an interesting job. I met a lot of nice people. Ralph Waite was one of my Weight Watcher members in Palm Desert, in Rancho Mirage. Nice guy, really nice guy. And gosh, there was some golf pro. I didn't really know him, but he came in and one of my receptionists said, "Oh, you know who that is?" And I said, "Not really." But I've met some really great people. Jean Nidich was the founder of Weight Watchers, and twice I was at an event where she was a speaker, and then she came around to every table and had her picture taken with all of us. So I have had a fantastic life. I've got 5 children, 8 grandchildren, 9 great-grandchildren, and I have 4 sons-in-law, and 3 of them are wonderful. The other one's okay. One of them, kind of iffy. But he knows I think he's iffy too. But he's been around for 18 years, so I don't think there's any. I don't think he's going anywhere. One of my daughters lives in St. George. She is just past 30 years with SkyWest. Can't imagine she's talking about retiring, and I just retired. I have one daughter that lives here, Sharon Keffer, and her husband Sean. He's a contractor, and they have a little boy, Derek. My son is an artist in Phoenix, and we did one show here in the Carl May of his paintings. I have a daughter who's an artist also in Phoenix, and then a daughter that's sometimes a little bit of a problem. And she has the husband that's iffy. So anyway, I'm really blessed. I'm very blessed. The kids are all healthy. We've had no major traumas. Just good things. Good things. So.
Okay.
And the displays here at the Carl May, have you been the sole organizer of those?
Mm-hmm. Nobody told me I could do it. I went to Pepper, who had that building down on Palm Drive that's gone now. The one across from the Mexican meat market. She had the, all the ceramic stuff. And I went to her and got 4 of Donalda's paintings, and I put them up in here. And I went up to the podium under public comments, and I said, "Doesn't it look nice? Wouldn't it look nice if there were more?" And they liked that. So I just went from there. And I've put stuff up ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody has objected to anything. Of course, I'm careful what I put up. There were things put up in here a few years ago by someone else who I some of the things I felt were objectionable. And so people know that I tell them there's a committee, but I'm it. So, how many more questions do you have, Ron?
Well, how about tell us about the process of creating the Veterans Park?
Okay. Oh, that's a story. Let me tell you. Do I name names?
Please.
Okay. One guy, I can't remember his name, but remember the woman that was president of the foundation, the Cabot Foundation, before Lisa?
Was it Lucy Whitmarsh?
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Her husband, and I can't remember his
He
name.
had a different name.
Different name. Anyway, he was an alternate on the commission. This was when the commission first started, in like 2002. He was an alternate. Paul Neville, who worked at Rose Mortuary, you weren't on there yet.
No.
Okay. Myself, Trenely Piper, and Adam Sanchez. Adam Sanchez was the chair. He appointed, which he shouldn't have done, he appointed 3 people to the committee. It should have only been 2, and a citizen. You can't have more than 2 commissioners on a project, because then it has to be a public meeting. But he didn't know that, and I didn't know that yet because I was brand new. So, but Rossi clued me in real quick, let me tell you. But the man who was Lucy's husband had a contact up in Nebraska or somewhere, and he had grandiose ideas about how we could do a Veterans Park. The Veterans Park was Paul Neville's, I'm visualizing them up there, was Paul Neville's idea. So Adam turned to me, to Paul, and said, okay, you, and turned to me and said, we want you. And then this other guy. So we had one meeting, and this guy had this picture of some kind of a sphere, and it was only going to cost $125,000. Yeah, like where were we going to get that kind of money? So we vetoed that, and he resigned. So that took care of him. So that left Paul and I. Well, Paul worked for Rose Mortuary, and he had contacts as far as getting monuments. So he gave me a ballpark figure of what a monument would cost. And he said, you can get it made and installed, and it'll be about $10,000. So I thought that would be all there was to it. Okay. So I tried to figure out ways to raise money. Nobody would help. Adam was no help. Nobody wanted anything to do with it. Oh, Marshall Rosenberg was on the commission at that time. He knew a guy, and his name's up at the park as the designer, and I can't think of his name right now. He and that guy worked on a design, and that's the design that we have there, pretty much. So here was the green granite 5-sided thing, the 5-sided star, and so forth, but no money to do it with. So we put cans around it. I put cans around, and I made signs, I made thermometers, I had them at the VFW and at the American Legion, and the money just wasn't coming in. And then it dawned on me, we could sell tiles. So nobody would go look for tiles. So I did. I found them. I found a person to sandblast them, a person who would cut the stencils to be able to sandblast them, and still no help. I had these suggestions, and they'd say, okay. So I went to a granite company down, I guess it would be in Bermuda Dunes, and took the drawing, picked out the granite, and brought it back and said, this is what I found, and this is what they'll do, and this is what it'll cost. They said, okay. And with selling the tiles then, I raised $10,000. So then it got turned over to the city. And that's when things changed a little bit. Where the black granite is up there, I wanted, the design was, and I also wanted black river rock. It would have given it texture. It would have been a lot prettier. Some people were pushing to get it done before we did. We did it in 2004, which for 2 years, to get that done in 2 years was pretty good. We went to the park. Jerry Hansen was there, Linda Kelly, Dan Patnoff, I don't know who else. Anyway, we looked at the park to see what we could do. Right in the middle of the park, where there now is the monument, was a tree. And it was in honor of a girl that had been killed in an automobile accident. And nobody seemed to know who she was. And of course we didn't want to move the tree without notifying the family or someone. Well, I was at the beauty shop and I talked about it, and she said, oh, that's Becky Venuti's daughter. There I found out in the beauty shop how to get in touch with that person. So I contacted her, and she agreed that, okay, move the tree, don't do another one, and so forth. I guess the park ended up costing about $65,000. By the time he, instead of using the ceramic tiles like I had picked out, he did the granite, and instead of the river rock, black granite. And I hate the sidewalk up there because the design on it could have been so much prettier, but the sidewalk that was there was bad. And he ordered the benches, and I said, ooh. And I sold the benches for $500 a piece. I could put a plaque on them. So I ended up with about $15,000 towards it.
That's great.
It was fun. It was fun doing it. Buzz gave me a lot of good publicity. And I can remember going up there right afterwards and making sure everything was okay, perfect and everything. And John Girardi caught me up there one time sweeping. It was on a Sunday and I had people coming. And so I took my broom over there on Sunday morning and had it all swept up before my company came. I know, Ron, you just didn't imagine how crazy I am.